Greetings, friends. This is Gemini Brett here to speak about the transits of today, November 12th, 2021. I want to reflect first before I look at the charts upon something I had written a couple of weeks ago. And one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of videos from me right now is I am currently guest guiding Astrology Hub's Inner Circle membership group, which is just a wonderful community. You might be in it and hearing this at that place, though I'm posting it to my own page and YouTube and all that as well. And so I rarely kind of write transits for every day of the month. Of course, many astrologers do. I think it's awesome. Like, I'm a little bit more in tune with, I guess, the planetary happenings of this current month because I sat down mostly in a bathtub to do that, like over the course of a few days, a couple of weeks ago, like looking at from new moon to the following new moon, the Sagittarius solar eclipse, and what's happening every day, and kind of picking one main event, which is always a tricky thing to do, right? So part of this flow will be about, well, how do you choose? Is it okay to, right? Is it okay to like single out one thing, right? When you read like horoscope columns, I'm gonna just change, well, let's put this away and just wrap for a second. Well, no, I should, we should see this on the screen if we want to talk about this. I'm just gonna make it a little prettier. All right, if you read horoscope columns, they'll take a moment like this. And Astro Gold software has brought in this wonderful thing that I use in many different ways, but it's called sun sign wheels. They'll be really small, so especially if you're watching on a phone, good luck. But they basically created this, I think, for horoscope writers. Because let's say the thing I'm looking at in this moment is this a Pisces moon, trine, Scorpio Mars. Right, or I could say later today, and this is what I focus on today, not only that trine or the Pisces moon who will trine Scorpio Mercury at like 9 something p.m. Pacific time, but also like what's happening right now, which is the Scorpio sun trine Pisces Neptune, right? So, I mean, oftentimes we'll think of that in just a zero Aries wheel, which some call the natural zodiac. And there's some astronomical support for it. I'm of the opinion, as many are, that astrology has kind of taken it too far, that Scorpio is the 8th house and Pisces is the 12th house. I think we can lose a lot about the signs and a lot about the houses when we do that. And I'm Gemini rising, like my 8th is Capricorn, my 12th is Taurus, right? And you see that here right now. But when we're writing for the globe, if I'm not going to write like, hey, Aries, it will be like this, Taurus, it will be like this, Gemini, it will be like this, which is kind of the main horoscopic practice of today. And by the way, horoscopos is the ascendant. So these days we think of horoscope as like a newspaper column. But in horoscope does mean technically like a map of the heavens, and so a chart is that. And so many today and in the day refer to the entire chart when they say the horoscope. But the horoscopos is the ascendant. It means the hour marker, the hour watcher, and it's you. And why do I share that? Because while we can create houses from any planet, right? So from the sun is what most people are doing, like sun sign astrology. You could do that from the moon. And in fact, if you were born at night like me, I suggest you do that even more than you look at like a sun sign column. But why not go from the horoscopos? So if you know the time of your birth, go with your ascendant. Right, so my ascendant's 936 Gemini, and that's cool. And I know like where the houses lay out in many different house systems of my chart, and maybe you're in that zone too. But you can also just say, okay, read this for Gemini. All right, well, if I'm talking about this Pisces or Scorpio Sun trine Pisces Neptune for Gemini, well, suddenly that's a 6th house and 10th house consideration. And these are both houses we associate with work, as Isabel comes here working on crunching a toy for us. Hey, hun, try this one. It's like not loud. What do you think? Nope. she knows her job. You know what I mean? She's staring at that thing like, that's not my job, dude. My job is to chew on this loud plastic thing. Okay. And fortunately, she said, but you know, my job does not have to happen in your office, so I'll take it to the hallway. That's what just happened. And, you know, maybe that will help me rectify Isabel's chart, but I'm not going to do that here today. Right. So, and, you know, what does this mean? So Neptune's in the 10th sign for those who were born with Gemini on the rise. And that's happening for a long time. Neptune moving through the 10th sign. Right. And look, I do have Gemini rising. I have an Aquarius midheaven, but Pisces is still the 10th sign. So I don't want to get into the whole sign or the house system debate here at all. I'm already way off script. But you know what? Scorpio, Pisces, don't bring a script to this thing. Anyway, so if I'm looking at Gemini, right, it's like, okay, well, Neptune's just been cruising through the 10th sign for a long time. Maybe you're going to come to a spiritual calling of career. I mean, that's happened for me, I would say. I'm sorry, I'll be right back. That sounds fun. Oh, okay. And, you know, and yeah, I mean, Neptune transiting the 10th sign, like that's Neptune moves slowly, right? So it's not like I'm not going to pay attention to that or bring offerings to that temple, but especially with Neptune, it can be a thing you kind of forget. But look, every month the moon is going to come in here and touch Neptune and give you an opportunity to remember that, and maybe bring something in your life to help you remember that clearly. Or it's not just like the moon will come through and conjoin Neptune. I mean, next month in April, Jupiter will come into Pisces and conjoin Neptune. And I think that's April. Definitely in April, Venus joins the mix, right? So we get like this triple Pisces happening of planets associated with that sign over time, which is an amazing thing. I mean, Neptune cruising through, and, you know, today, the sun comes in and trines Neptune. Right, in this closing trine of their cycle. It's a once in a year phenomena. I mean, once in every 367 days. So like, that's a thing, right? And it's a huge thing. And so, you know, that would be an important thing, I think, for the horoscopic, and I mean horoscope column writer to probably focus in on today. And I chose that transit for the transit of the day. So, you know, in the Gemini mix, well, interesting. I didn't mean to get on here and like talk about this, but I am actually talking about why I'm doing more astrology work, like publicly in videos and whatnot, which film is associated with Neptune, interestingly. All right, so let me try to get back into the thing. So for the Gemini mix, we do have the sun in the 6th, moving through that house of health and illness, you know, but because it's also toil. And I say this a lot, like if the 2nd is only your need for money, then it gives birth to, what do I mean? Child is the 5th. So the 5th of the 2nd, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the 6th. So if the 2nd is only a need for money, then it gives birth to like toil, which gives birth to a job, which gives birth to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 money, which somehow makes us like need to toil at some job more. And you can get stuck on this 2, 6, 10 grand trine hamster wheel. That doesn't feel so great, right? These things shift when the 2nd becomes not like my need for money, but my need to value myself. And the 6th then tends to look more like a sacred work. Traditional astrologers tend to hate that kind of modern idea of the 6th, but because back in the day, it's just a bad house and it's like illness, you know, but I'll suggest that oftentimes we can find illness if we turn our back on our calling. And sometimes I actually see that more rooted in the 6th, where the 10th is how we show up, you know, what we're doing in our legacy. I like to call the 10th the legend, and the 6th our practice. So we can kind of turn these knobs in any of these places, and then the 10th instead of job becomes more like vocation, right? So that's something, if I was speaking specifically for Gemini, or, you know, I would kind of say, oh, what is the dream? Why dream Pisces? Scorpio, what are you passionate about? What is a dream of a way you can apply your passions in your career? For example, right? If I was talking to Taurus, and I would say more for Taurus rising than Taurus sun, but that can work, or Taurus moon can work too. Now we have that sun and the other Scorpio planets who are involved in these two trines in the 7th, right? And the moon and Neptune in the 11th. And this is always true of a trine. It's a 1-5 relationship, right? I mean, depending on who's moving faster, I can go in many ways, but the 7th and the 11th are related by a trine. And the trine, the 5, I always think of what is the child of, right? So the 7th is partnering in relationships. Well, what is the child of that? Community. I mean, sometimes so literally though, that like you get married and now you have this whole new set of potential friends who are the friends of your marital partner, or you come into business with a partner, and now it's not only like your community that's already established as potential customers for what you're offering, but theirs too, right? Because the community is more of an 11th house thing, groups, where the 7th would be like, partners. So, I mean, it's a weird phrase, but like person that you're in bed with, right? We use that not to only talk about intimate, right? Courting in that regard, or marital partners, like a business partner, because now like your success is tied to their energetic and all that too, right? So if I was talking Taurus, I'm a little bit more in that realm of like friends and groups, but like, I'm just going to leave that. I'm not going to do a horoscope for all these things. So just kind of to finish the example, I would go for Cancer, right here. Cancer, the Scorpio business is in the 5th, and the Pisces business is in the 9th. Well, interestingly, the fifth of the 5th is the 9th, right? So if the 5th is your kids, their kids are the 9th. So the 9th is grandkids, which is a really cool thing. But it's like 5th is passion and romance and risks. The 9 is like our journey, right? So this one actually, I would say, because there's so much spirit in here too with Pisces and especially Neptune, this feels like a beautiful opportunity for like a pilgrimage, but maybe like a pilgrimage through your own artistic expression. I mean, if you're a musician, I would say just write a song about God today, basically. Let me leave that there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but Scorpio is the 4th of Leo, where Pisces is the 8th. Oh, let's do a thing there. If you are safe and have shelter, then you are able to step into your deep transformations, right? In Virgo, Scorpio's in the 3rd, Pisces is the 7th. It's like, are you communicating to the other, but are you learning that to get your point across, you have to learn to speak in their language, right? And I'd probably finish up with one of my tendencies or normal cliches that I found my way to, which is like, no, the golden rule you were taught is wrong. It's not do unto others how they would do unto you. It's do unto others how they would have done unto them. Like this is a great confusion in relationship realms, where we think as long as I do for her, I'll say that in my realm, okay, but as long as I do for her what I need, she's going to be happy. Wrong. She doesn't need what I need. That's ridiculous, right? And coming to terms with that in astrology can help. You know what helps more? Communication, right? There's the 3rd, right? I'll say the 3rd is a little bit more about communicating what I need. That's the 2nd, right? And the needs of the needs. So for me, 2nd is the needs. The needs of the needs is the 2nd of the 2nd, which is from 2, 1, 2, the 3rd. The 3rd is the 2nd of the 2nd. The needs of my needs is to communicate them. Communicate my needs, like that's happening the 3rd. But what happens in like relationship in many regards is born there because I need something from outside of me. I mean, like the baby needs mother's milk, or somebody with a bottle, or at least a wolf with whatever the wolf brings you to raise a baby in a cave. Like, like we're not going to survive on our own. And the 3rd of like tools and communication, expression, these kinds of things is like born out of that need for survival. The 7th is a very different story, right? The 7th is about, oh, whoa, you have needs too? Let me be considerate. Like, let's collaborate, let's compromise, let's find ways to make that work, right? And in that exploration, you're like, oh, whoa, that's weird. Like, that person's different than me. That person doesn't need exactly what I need. Really? Oh, okay. Well, what do you need? And they might tell you, right, authentically, precisely. And then you're like, huh? Because they speak a different language than you. Well, I mean, like now I do have a partner who has multiple languages, and so there's a truth in that, like literally for me. But I mean, even when your partner speaks the same language, the English, if it is, that you do, that doesn't mean you can understand it because they are also speaking the language of their, like, well, chart, if we speak astrologically, like, but in their, like, survival instincts, you know, psychologically, you might get into their speaking the language of their, well, psychology. Let me just leave it there. Right. And so we need to learn how to do that. And the cool thing there, right, learning how to hear the other's language. And I mean, even think of this, right? What is the language of the partner? So this is all derived houses, right? Whereas language equals the third, and there's many realms where it can exist in the chart, but in many regards, the third is like communication. The partner is the seventh, right? So the language or communication of the partner, 1, 2, 3, is the ninth. You see that the third of the seventh is the ninth. And what is the ninth but long distance journey, foreign travels, other lands? In other words, there is some astrological support for this idea that your partner speaks in a foreign tongue. But your communication, the third, has to learn to relate to that, the ninth. And actually going overseas or going to other places where we don't share a common tongue is super cool training because, you know, you have to figure out how to speak with your hands, or we learn that we can communicate even without language, but it really is tricky, isn't it? And the ninth is also a place too that we can access through some languagelessness, right? Like in meditation and that's certainly happening in the 12th as well. Well, this is taking a turn, this transmission. Okay, that's all right. It's fun too because with what I'm teaching this month at Astrology Hub, which I mentioned before, a lot of these things will be kind of clues as to what I'm getting after and what's called turning the wheel. Okay, anyway, so it's not when we realize that, oh my gosh, like, first of all, my partner has different needs than I do. Right, so like if I buy her a birthday present that would make me so happy, it's not guaranteed to make her happy. That's like one of the crash courses of learning, oh, they're not me, right? So, oh, they have the other needs, and let me just ask them and listen. I'm just thinking of a conversation last night. Let me come back here. And then try to learn how to, like, we need a Rosetta Stone. We need some way to translate what they're actually saying into our language so we can comprehend it and appropriately respond. And it's a really, really hard thing, right? And then the other side of that, because you always want to look at the other side of things, it's like, oh my gosh, and why therefore should I ever expect my partner or anyone else to understand what I'm saying if I only say it in my language? Do you see what I mean? So this realm of the third and the seventh, which we found our way to somehow here, is really also about this beautiful dance and creative work, right? And as much as the seventh is the fifth of the third, and fifth is creativity in this, right? So, and by the way, so let's just be there. Like, I have needs. I need to communicate my needs to survive. Well, that truth, like baby needs to cry for mother's milk. By the way, the third traditionally is the joy of the moon. You see that? Well, that gives birth to relationship. When I say give birth to, I mean the fifth, because the fifth is children, but the fifth of the third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is the seventh. And before I was saying, you know, all trines, like the Scorpio Pisces thing, which somehow has brought us to 3, 7, because I'm looking at this more in I guess Virgo rising chart where Scorpio is on the 3rd and Pisces on the 7th, right? So again, like the Aries rising charts, it's only 1/12 of the possibilities. And that's whole sign. Okay. So while the 7th is the 5th of the 3rd, right? My needs, to communicate my needs, give birth to relationship and partnership. And that's just true. And trines are 1/5, right? Like Pisces is the 5th of Scorpio. Well, that's appropriate, okay, for the Sun trine Neptune, because Sun moves faster. So in this moment, and let me hit now because it might have happened. It's 1 arc minute away, right? The Sun is applying to trine Neptune, and that's why good grammar, speak the name of the faster moving planet first. So this is not a Mars trine Moon. It's Moon trine Mars. Some hours from now, Moon is going to move far enough along in the sign of Pisces to perfect this trine with Mars here-ish. And then she will continue to trine Mercury. And now look at that trine. So yes, while Pisces is the 5th of Scorpio, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Scorpio is the 9th of Pisces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? So a trine is inherently a 1/5 relationship, but it's also a 1/9 relationship. It is also a 1/9 relationship. The 1/5/9 forms the grand trine. And so let's bring it back to this example where we were, even though the chart doesn't show this. And maybe I should just bring a chart in that does. Let's make a whole sign chart. And we'll put Virgo at the ascension, since like this is where we've somehow landed. Okay, so Scorpio is the 3rd and Pisces is the 7th, right? And so this is where I've kind of been voicing a lot of this today somehow, right? Where we have the 3rd and my need to express my needs. That's the birth of communication. Itself gives birth to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 relationships. But while the 7th, relations, is the 5th of the 3rd, and instead of relationship, I should say partners. There's many different kinds of relationships. 7th is partners, right? So while expression, communication, tools, there's many ways to describe the 3rd, gives birth to partners. Partners gives birth to communities and groups and friends, and then friends, right? So large communities, we really have to, like, that gives birth to different forms of communication, the 3rd. Because when I have like 7 different people that I need to speak with, if I'm in a room speaking, or here I am speaking astrology, there's like 12 people I need to speak to. I need to speak to Aries and to Taurus. And should I always start with Aries so Pisces gets like, oh, sorry, we're out of time? You know how that happens. Anyway, so today we're like speaking to Virgo. Great. The 3rd is the 9th of the 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the 9th, right, is called the house of God, traditionally. So I love this, like in this case of Virgo. Why on the Virgo path? And I think of path as a first house word personally. I know many people look to the North Node. For me, that's the ascendant. I like to say what's rising when you rose is rising within you. This is your horoscopos. In the day also called the Iacos, which means the rudder, right? So Virgo in this case is the path. Well, why is the Virgo path meant to bring offerings to the temple called Taurus? You can learn a lot in that contemplation. Why for Leo is it Aries? Why for Libra is it Gemini? But I'm going to leave that there. Am I? So Libra, if you're in a path of partnership, well, then you better bring offerings to the temple Gemini called communication. Leo, if you're on a path of radiance, you better bring offerings to the temple Aries called individuating, right? Like if you really want to shine, you have to be okay with the truth that selfness does not equal selfish. Got it? Right? Well, so what about this one? So I'm on a path of being like an obsessive compulsive cynic. No, that's not what Virgo is. That's just what those books on the shelf say it is, because they've forgotten that Virgo is the sacred. And if I'm on a path of exploring the sacred, well, I better, because the sacred here, earth, I better bring temple offerings to the temple of beauty and embodiment and receiving and sensuality and Greeno coming into the earth and Epicureanism. Okay, so the 9th of the 7th, like, where must partnership pray? Where must we bring, and I mean P-R-E, wait, pray, A-Y, where must we bring, what's up with pray and pray? It's a really tricky homonym. And that's going to get me into all sorts of Age of Pisces deception territory, and let's try not to swim down that stream right now. Okay. Which temple must the 7th bring offerings to? And the answer is, because the 9th is like spirit, right? The 9th of the 7th is the 3rd. If you have the ruler of your 7th house in the 3rd, you are a specialist in this way, okay? The 9th of the 7th is the 3rd. If we really want to partner, we need to bring offerings to the temple called communication. Just clearly. You will learn so much practicing with the chart in this way. And now I guess let's get to the point of today's transmission, which that must have been it. I'm going to go to right now. Sagittarius is rising where I am. Can't you tell? And right, we're on this journey, and I'm speaking about what? Communication. Why do I circle Jupiter? Well, Sagittarius is rising where I sit. And Sagittarius, the rudder is steered by Jupiter. Jupiter in Aquarius in the 3rd. How about revolutionary and out of the box, but also maybe astrological ways of describing the spirit and truth of communication as a journey? All right. So I guess that's what happened to me. And maybe I should have looked at the chart before I started talking about the chart. Well, that's a weird statement, because, it's really tricky. So when we're writing like when I'm writing transits, right, I shouldn't speak for other astrologers. It's hard to take myself out of the mix. Now, when I say that, I don't mean, one way where we experience that is like, okay, well, if my natal chart's here in the middle, and then I'm looking at the right now in respect to that. Oh, and so that Pisces moon is coming up to the top of my chart, and Neptune in the 10th, and this Scorpio stuff in the 6th, and oh, whoa, that sun is, like, as it does every year, getting so close to my north node, and like, I don't mean that, right? And we shouldn't not do that as astrologers, and we should probably do that with many house systems considered and all that, right? I mean, so much of us are learning astrology through the eyes of our own nativity. That's not wrong, because it's you, right? But if I'm going to speak to a community as I am now, like, I need to try to get my chart out of it, right? Even though I will be using my own chart as an example in the class that I'm teaching, because who could I speak for other than myself? And I can barely speak for him, as you can tell. Right, and so let me just offer that when I'm looking at my nativity now, it's like, oh, cool, moon's coming into that place that creates a grand trine between Sun, Uranus, and Mars in my nativity. And this year I'm in a Mars Time Lord year, and I'm teaching profections and Time Lords. We'll be working on a class as soon as I hit end on this forever stream, right? And so that's like a really key thing, and it's, so there you go, right? But I'm more interested in a sense in the moon being at her bendings. And I didn't speak about that today because, well, I see that the moon is at maximum southern latitude, which means she's square and ahead of the south node. That's an amazing thing. I can see it in the sky. I actually recorded a video a couple of nights ago I should put up of how we can actually see the moons travel above and below the ecliptic. It's a very visible thing. Like, though there's no bodies where the nodes live, you can learn to see them in space with your face, right? When I'm looking at like a transit of the day, part of it is like aligned to what happened yesterday, what's happening tomorrow, and also like, so I called out 2 transits today, and interestingly, one which is happening right now, right, which is this Sun Neptune trine. Now I'm in Boston, Massachusetts time, so fine, in the East Coast. It looks like it's 11:20. I'll give you the exact time. Sun trine Neptune, and 11:23:35 a.m. East Coast time. It's like right now, right now. It's like, that's fun. It's like literally happening in seconds from now. Okay. And then the other one I looked at is, well, Moon will trine Mars, but I also looked at, well, when later does Moon trine Mercury? And the answer will actually be on November 13th, East Coast time, and for many of you in Europe and all that. But if I bring this to where I live, this one's faster to type. Whoa, come on. That's now 9:22 or 9:23 p.m. Right? So I like that, in the morning it's the Sun trine Neptune, Scorpio Pisces connected, and then at the night it's like Moon trine Mars Mercury, right? And so, I mean, a trine is like thumbs up, good, beautiful, like the most benefic, the Jupiterian aspect, right? And then I get this text message, because this is fun, like, and I get these all the time. This is something that Astrology Hub Inner Circles membership group, it's like one of the many kind of benefits, right? Is you get these texts from whoever's teaching for that particular lunation cycle. And this month it's me. So I'm like literally bathing this morning and I get this text. And it's Sun trine Neptune at 8:23 a.m., Moon trine Mercury at 9:23 p.m. Pacific time. The world is in pain. Will you love it all anyway? Compassion is the way. Gemini Brett. I'm like, oh, that's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy for trines. Nice work, Gemini Brett. Like, dude, turn that frown upside down. We've been talking about really heavy stuff astrologically the last couple of days. Well, I will say the text offer kind of a shorter version. As you can see, brevity is not my specialty, dude. So I wrote a little bit more. In this case, I'm trying to write them short. I used to write these really long things, and then, giving more work to the team who needs to, for the text message, like in their private group on Facebook and other places now, like you get the full thing, but in the text message, they have to short it down. You only get so many characters and all that, right? So there was only one more sentence to this, which was, so I'll read it from the top again. It's like, the world is in pain. Will you love it all anyway? Compassion is the way. Ride the wave to a brand new day is what I wrote. I'm a fan of bad rhyming, or good rhyming if you prefer. So I might have trimmed that one down to compassion is the way, ride the wave to a brand new day, and everybody smiles. But, and I'm not sure who chose this, but I actually celebrate them because they chose in my text, and look, it did start this way, but the world is in pain. Will you love it all anyway? Compassion is the way, which does a lot more, right? I mean, it calls for more soul work than compassion is the way, ride the wave to a brand new day. That's just like, oh, thanks. Cool. Yes, I will. How about the world is in pain? And then in the Facebook group, the post began with like something like, where is your compassion call today? Or what are you compassionate about today? And I wrote this long thing and didn't post it because I'm afraid to like really, I guess bring too much of me. And it's just it's a tricky time in this world, isn't it? Anyway, I started writing about how my heart goes out to these kids who are kind of being technologically treated in a way right now, contrary to their nature, based upon the general propaganda brainwashing of their parents. There you go. And I see that all here, right? So this is compassion, right? And Scorpio is passion, but it's also manipulation. Now, manipulation doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like part of my job, when I sit with clients is to magically manipulate them in a beautiful way to choose to be better versions of themselves. Right? Like that is good Scorpio. I'm not saying I'm successful at that or that I can do that every time or whatever, right? Like I'm going to let the session goes where the session goes too. But, in general, that magical side of me would like to be kind of a living force of helping powerful awakening people choose to heal themselves and grow themselves, right? Like that's, I would call healthy magic and healthy manipulation. I'm not saying I'm successful all the time, maybe never, but that's the intention. And look, Gemini rising, I do have Scorpio on the 6th, right? So let me make my daily work magical manipulation of the highest order. And Pisces on the 10th sign, right? So that I can be in service to spirit and compassion. Now, yesterday I went on a rant about you can't have compassion without passion. Passion, Scorpio gives birth to compassion. If we look in this so-called natural zodiac wheel, yeah, the 8th is Scorpio and the 12th is Pisces. Now, that's only true for Aries rising. But the truth is 0 degrees tropical Aries is due east from the center of Earth where we are all one. So it does work like a global ascendant. And I'm going to leave that there. But there's some astronomical support for this idea of the so-called natural zodiac. Well, look, the 8th can be loss. What does loss give birth to? Misery, the 12th, or depression. Well, the 8th can be death. What does death give birth to? Like, we can have an idea of what death is. Like I can tour around beautiful tombs in Egypt and fantasize about the other side and, the Pharaoh's boat through the Duat, and, but when somebody next to you dies, somebody that you love and they are gone, where did they go? And you start asking that question for real, right? And that's how, in that sense, death, not your death, but that of the others, can give birth to the 12th and looking through the other side and faith and all sorts of beautiful 12th house themes, okay? Simultaneously, the 8th is the 9th of the 12th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So the 12th needs to bring offerings to the 8th. Like Dia de los Muertos does that really beautifully, right? But the 12th, let's do this one way. The 12th is the unknown, right? And the impossible to know. Well, if you really want to explore that, bring some offerings to the temple of entanglements with another being, which is also what the 8th can be, right? Like I like to think of the 7th as the marriage, but the 8th is the honeymoon. And the divorce, right? I mean, it's like the entanglements and the shared heart and all sorts of things. And you can see that language resonates with the idea of Scorpio. I mean, it's interesting. Not only have we projected what we know of the signs onto the houses, but we've actually pulled what we used to know about the houses into the signs. And that opens up a really long conversation I don't think we should get into now. This turns out to be this long teaching. I meant to literally be on for 10 minutes. Shocker. I love Venus at the midpoint of this Moon, Mars, Mercury situation. We can go on and on. But when I pick this, and why do I say, well, the world is in pain? Well, some of that comes from Scorpio and Pisces, and passion and compassion. But the other side is look, while the sun, yes, is trining Neptune, the sun is squaring Jupiter. While the moon would trine Mars and Mercury and sextile Venus, right? The Mars and Mercury, they're square Saturn, right? So when we're in Mercury's opposite Uranus and Saturn is square Uranus and yeah, Venus is trine Uranus. So there's always, and I spoke about this yesterday, tensions and release, right? Let's just put the chart away and end by wrapping English a little bit. So, right, when we're looking for one thing in a chart and then maybe writing the columns of what does that mean for Aries and for Taurus and for Gemini and all the things, that doesn't mean, if you want to do this successfully and do this in a way that hopefully will help speak to how each individual is experiencing this global thing, or it's a tricky job, right? You can't only focus on that one transit. If you did, I'm like Trine and butterflies and moonbeams, y'all. Right? So go meditate by a lake and ascend to the 5th dimension today. Okay, well, maybe that's going to work for a couple of folks, but probably not for too many, especially anyone who has their eyes open and are willing, this is a Scorpio month, to take the deep dive and leave no stone unturned and look into the dark shadows of this control system of world of manipulation, and with Pisces, which can very much be propaganda, right? Like that's, and then with these Scorpio Aquarius squares, like it's not easy. This is like a release for something that is really tense. So why begin with, hey, compassion is the way, ride the wave to a brand new day, right? Why not begin with the world is in pain and compassion is the way? Which I think invites us in a more scorpionic level, kind of choose the alchemy, do the work. And once again, like if I'm going to do this right, I also want to look at tomorrow and yesterday, right? So like, where is today in the flow of a greater story? Well, that was a much greater story than I meant to tell, but you've heard me say that also enough already. If you've enjoyed this unintentional astrology lesson into derived houses and how there's actually 144 houses on the wheel, because while the 7th is the 7th, it's also the 5th of the 3rd. It's also the 4th of the 4th, and the 3rd of the 5th, and the 2nd of the 6th, and I could go on all the way around the wheel. You can do this in 12 ways for all 12 houses. There's actually 144, and it will teach you so much about astrology if you go investigate that. Why is it that the 2nd gives birth to the 6th? Why is it that the 3rd gives birth to the 7th? I actually spoke about both of those today. Why does the 4th give birth to the 8th? I spoke about that one a little bit too, didn't I? We've been in a lot of places. Why does the 5th give birth to the 9th? Grandkids, there's something more. Why does gosh, we did all of them. We did a lot of them in that really short but long flow. So, hey, if you've received something here that you dig and you'd like to give something back, you will find a donate link at my website, which is geminibrett.com. Your present is the greatest presence. And just liking this video wherever you're seeing it and sharing it around, like that helps me defeat the algorithm. Speaking of algol, let's talk about that powerful star when it's lunar eclipse time, coming soon to a theater called you. See you in space, friends.